I feel a chill. The full moon is out. There has been reports on the radio of serial killers running amok. There is a spirit in my house. I'm afraid of monsters. They're under my bed. But what is scarier than all those things? No, it's not a killer car. But what is scarier than all of those things? It is being a Hollywood producer and losing $174 million in a movie that was supposed to start a franchise, but instead was a massive flop. And I did not know this before going into it. This is the biggest flop in movie history.
Is it one of the most expensive movies in movie history?
I didn't see that.
You probably would have found it.
No, it's
quick.
not. It's not.
Okay.
But it is all estimated by Deadline estimation. This movie,
Deadline, the news.
Yeah.
Okay.
With like advertising and all that stuff, it lost $174 million. Huge blow.
That hurts to even hear.
Yeah. So what's scary? Well, here we go, folks. The podcast has been around. We're
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. We've been around. This is the Macabre Podcast universe, and we exist by day. We exist to prove people wrong when they say that sequels are never better than the originals. But by Halloween night, we take on a movie that was intended to have sequels but failed to do so. And last year we covered Fantastic Four, 2015 Fantastic Four, and that was a pretty awful movie.
Yes. Hated that movie.
I don't think that this movie falls into that same category.
No. Honestly, only fond thoughts for this movie.
I think it's kind of good.
Yeah. I did not hate it.
It has some problems, but it was not as bad. I think we've covered much worse movies on this podcast.
I think this movie is a love letter to several different directors.
Yes. And, well, for those of you who just clicked on this, didn't click the title, we're talking about 2018's Mortal Engines, which, if you are like most people, you didn't see it.
Yeah.
But part of the reason why we wanted to do this, we do try and think of things ahead and in advance. But when we covered the Lord of the Rings trilogy, followed by the Hobbit trilogy, Peter Jackson, we were like, well, here was the next thing he was trying to get going. He's a main producer on this. His name was on all of the advertising. It was like, remember the guy who brought you The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings? He's about to bring you a new franchise. Now, I don't know for sure if they were, I didn't look at any of the old trailers, if they were saying this is going to be a new franchise.
I think it's safe to assume that if this movie did even a little bit well, there was going to be another one.
Well, and I watched an hour interview, half hour with Peter Jackson, half hour with Christian Rivers, the director of the movie, and it was before the movie came out. And it was so sad, Jordan, because knowing everything about it, you're like, oh boy. But they're talking to Adam from Mythbusters.
Which one's that one?
He is the red-haired guy. And he has a YouTube channel, and I think he just interviews creative people. And they had sent him like 24 minutes of the movie, and Adam's like, this is so cool. Like, I love this. And as an engineer...
They only sent him 24 minutes?
Well, it was before it came out.
No, I know. They didn't even let him screen the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, honestly, maybe it was for the best for this interview.
But it was like cool because I think if I'd have seen this interview and not have seen the movie, not have known what had happened, I'd be like, oh, this is like the beginning of this big thing, And Jackson did mention like, well, we'll have to see how it does, but there's more books.
Yeah.
And then the director too was like, I don't know, but there's more to tell.
How many books are there?
There are, I think, 4 main books, and then I think there's 5 like prequel books or something. So it's a big series by Philip Reeves.
And this is young adult?
It's young adult, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, jump in. I've been talking a lot.
I mean, I have never knew this was a series. I don't know anyone who's read this. But I am just sure the one of the biggest risks you can take as a filmmaker is adapting a young adult book to the screen.
Right.
It was accomplished very well in Harry Potter, as it is famously known. Well, right. I mean, I know some people don't like it, but I would say for the most part, success. And then Twilight comes out, and
which we talked about
they're-
this year as well.
and they're like so bad they're good. So technically success.
Yeah.
In some ways. And then Percy Jackson comes out, and I haven't read those either, but apparently it is one of the most atrocious adaptations of a book that is so beloved, of a series
Right.
that's so beloved. And I believe, because didn't that kill a franchise?
Yeah, they may have made 2 of those. I can't
okay.
remember though.
I just remember people like going nuts. I think I even, in one of my college classes, someone was singing a Greek mythology class, and I don't remember what the project is. Maybe it was adapting it, Greek adaptations to anything.
Yeah.
And someone used that movie as like one of the worst examples
Oh boy.
of a bad adaptation. Like it's that bad, and it meant that much to that person.
Which was it was, remember, it's directed by Chris Columbus, who started the Harry Potter franchise. So that seems like a total slam dunk on paper.
I know.
Um,
So this is just falling. So it's like young adult series.
Aragon, another one.
Aragon,
They
another
made
one.
one movie.
They made one movie. Apparently, they did it so terribly. I've never read those books either, but I remember hearing that they gave so much away that's not even in the first book, that they ruined it so that they couldn't even make more movies. That's how it was told to me.
Yeah.
But this one, unfortunately, falls under those categories too, where it's a young adult series, make it a movie. Not only that, they're trying to make it an epic scale.
Yeah.
And it does not work.
Well, and here's the thing. So you had asked last night, you said, are they cramming maybe multiple books into this? Is that something that's happening? I read the synopsis of the first book, and while there are some differences, pretty much the same.
Cool.
I thought. So you would think on a base level, this movie would at least make its money back.
Because
you'd think...
Was everyone sick that weekend? Was there another pandemic going on?
Well, it just... The critics didn't like it. Like, nobody really...
I
nobody
wish
really
I knew
liked
someone who's read it who can tell me, like, why they didn't see it or why they didn't like it. Because as someone who knows nothing about it, I mean, I didn't see it because it looked too bombastic for me. It looked like plus I didn't like that it felt a little pretentious that they were advertising it as this is the next Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
and
I remember
like
being kind of
that.
offended by that.
Yeah.
But I think part of me, I mean, when this was being advertised, that would be 2018. So I was coming around to being more okay with like, no, I love Avengers or something, because, there's that period before that where it's like, no, I only like Paul Thomas Anderson films. And, and now it's like, yes, I love those too, but it's okay to like The Terminator or you can like movies that are really popular and just not liking them doesn't mean that you're better or understand movies more.
Yep.
I
think probably maybe part of the reason why this didn't do well is because this was in the middle of all of the Marvel stuff, right? Well, I know it was kind of at the end-ish, but
this would be the same year as I mean, it came out in December, though, so this would be just before Captain Marvel, like a month before Captain Marvel, and then like 4 months before
So we are
Endgame.
so used to these types of movies. Like, we are so tired of them that I think advertising another one that's the next big thing, I'm just wonder if a lot of people were like, no, I'm already into Marvel.
Yeah.
I can't get into anything else.
Right. Well, and what's a shame that I think we'll be bringing up probably a lot during this conversation is that the movie, while some of the stuff is not that great, and some of the story stuff and character work I don't think works that well, although if you judge it on like a YA level, I think it's actually fine.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this movie has like a lot of stuff we've never seen on screen before.
Yeah.
And people didn't go see it, us included.
Yeah.
And what's unfortunate is that reinforces like studios to be like, well, they want to see superheroes punch each other. We don't want to like try and introduce a new world. So it discourages people in the future because they can. And
I don't think it was dystopian enough to be to please the dystopian audience.
Yeah,
because it is described as a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah,
but it does not feel like those kinds of movies. So I don't think it can even appeal to like Hunger Games fans.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's too fantasy.
This is, well,
were you gonna say way better?
It's way better than Mockingjay 2 and 3 by a long shot. This movie
2 and 3.
1 and 2, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as good as Catching Fire or Hunger Games 1, but it is like way better than the
so much
Mockingjay movies.
rather those movies. You know what they're missing? Shrike. You know what this movie has?
Shrike.
Shrike.
Rules.
Yeah.
I love Shrike. He is.
And no,
he is
we
cool.
don't. We're not mispronouncing Shrek.
No.
But he does have green eyes.
Yeah. But yeah. So let's get into a little bit of the behind the scenes here, and then we can talk more specific. So this is Christian Rivers' first movie.
Yeah.
He's on the art department of like Jackson movies from like Fellowship on. So he's in King Kong and The Hobbits.
I call him, he's Jackson's protege.
Yeah. And he did the second unit directing, a lot of second unit directing on the Hobbit movies.
So he was with Andy Serkis in that helicopter?
Probably, yeah. And he is the man who brought us the barrel chase scene. Peter Jackson specifically said that he directed the barrel scene.
Okay.
Screenplay. Now, these names are going to be familiar if you listen to our Middle-earth saga. Screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson. Those are the same people we talked about. The music. Now, the music. Okay, do you want to say anything about the music?
Ripping off a lot of Lord of the Rings soundtrack or score.
There was a part at the end where it went, da-na-na-na, and then it changed. And then there was another part that was like, I think it did like the later thing where it's like, na-na-na-na-na.
Yeah.
Na-na-na-na-na.
Also, not even talking about how it's ripping off some of that, but the opening sequence of this movie, like 3 minutes in, I was just like, score is so annoying. It was just like, but not in a psycho way. Oh,
well,
man,
I thought it was
so
a
annoying.
cool. I thought it was a cool riff,
but it was just so long.
yeah, I think maybe the scene. Maybe here's what I think happened. They sent it to the composer, and I'm saving the composer. But I think they sent it to the composer, and maybe the scene was like rough, and it was like 3 minutes.
Oh.
And then when they were editing it more, they were like, "Well, this scene's like crazy. It needs to be 10 minutes." And they were like, "It's too late to get them to like retract this."
So
and
loop
so they're
it.
like, "Loop it."
Oh.
But the music is by Tom Holkenborg. Now, we've talked about him before. Back in the year of 2019, when we covered a movie called Mad Max Fury Road.
Ah.
He goes by the name Junkie XL. And he created...
Wait, he's in the movie?
He did the score for Mad Max Fury Road. This is the same composer.
How did he do such a bad score?
Well, here's the thing. Well, here's the thing, but Mad Max Fury Road is like one of the best scores of the past like 20 years.
Yeah.
Like you had to put it in the top 50 probably. And it's pretty influential. And then this one, not so hot. I don't think, well, no, I didn't like it. I didn't really like the score.
This is going to sound so mean, so I don't actually mean it. But as anyone who touches Peter Jackson in some way of working with him, do they all become one-hit wonders? Like, did that guy just have that one score that's awesome and then...
No, I think he's got some other good ones.
Okay. I know that was a joke. Peter
joke.
Jackson's done a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for another... Because, he did that World War I movie where he, like, he took, like, old footage from World War I and he colorized it.
Didn't know that.
It's like a documentary.
That's cool.
And I think it's called While We're Young or While We Were Old. Or we're When We're Still Young or something like that.
Yeah.
But people really liked it. It got like critical acclaim and people thought it was really awesome. And it was kind of groundbreaking. They did a Corridor Crew VFX artist react to it because of the way they like made it widescreen and they changed the coloring
they really
and all
changed
that
a lot.
stuff.
Okay.
But they kept it like true to the period so it doesn't look distracting. You almost like there's a transition in the movie and you almost like don't quite like you do notice it, but it's like so natural. It just feels like, oh, they must have taken the color out to do the first scene. But anyway, I'm really anxious for him to do a new movie. I just want to see him do a new movie. Well, I think when you take into account that and then you take into account this movie, I think he's just had his plate full. Like, that's a lot of work for someone to do. And it seems like he's, I mean, it's the director said that he wasn't like on set every day, like telling him what to do, and he wasn't like overlooking him, you know, the whole time. But he seems like a very hands-on producer. You know, if you work with Peter Jackson, you're gonna hear his ideas, and he's gonna help out. He's just not like a helicopter producer.
Yeah.
Anyway, the cinematography is by Simon Raby, who did did a Wanted TV show, which I didn't realize they made.
Wanted, like James McAvoy and Angelina Jolie.
I think so.
Sure.
I guess it could be a Western. I didn't click on it, frankly.
Why would it be a Western based on that title?
Wanted, like
Oh, okay.
Wanted, Dead or Alive.
Okay.
And then he did the second unit director of photography for all 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
Okay.
So Mortal Engines comes out December 14th, 2018. Okay, the budget of the movie is 100 to 150 million, somewhere in there. Now, listener, if you're confused, I did say the movie lost 174 million. That's, I believe, factoring in advertising and like sending it to studios and all that stuff. And the movie makes, here in the U.S., it makes $15.9 million. That is less than the budget of Insidious 3.
And it definitely got wide release.
Yeah. Worldwide, $83.6 million. It doesn't even make $100 million. So that is a huge fall. It kind of hurts a little bit, even though, again, this movie wasn't like, I didn't love the movie, but it's not a $83 million like flop movie. There are Marvel movies I like less than this movie.
Absolutely.
Like, I think both Ant-Man movies, quality-wise, are much worse than this movie.
Absolutely. I would so much rather watch this than Ant-Man.
I think all the Thors are not as good.
Yeah.
Maybe Ragnarok is better, but I would maybe argue that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this movie had some stuff I've never seen before, and I love Shrike. So it's a little odd. It's a little odd. Just a couple more. Okay. So the author praised the movie. He liked it, so that's cool.
Doesn't get your money back, though.
No, it doesn't. It was filmed from April 2017 to July 2017, so long post-production. And then I'm just going to read this. This is like the box office nitty-gritty, but I think it's interesting. It was initially projected to gross $10 to $13 million from 3,103 theaters in its opening weekend. Okay, 10 to 13. After making just $2.8 million on its first day, including the Thursday night previews, weekend estimates were lowered to $7 million. It went on to debut to $7.5 million, finishing 5th at the box office on its opening weekend.
So here, I just have a question. Well, actually finish it.
Okay, so it finished 5th, making $7.5 million in the U.S. The film fell 77% in its second weekend to $1.7 million, one of the largest drops for a wide release of all time, and finished in 13th when Aquaman, Mary Poppins Returns, and Bumblebee were released during the Christmas holiday.
So it almost feels like, does no one like this book? Has no one read this book? Because you can't even get people who have read the book to come out and see the movie. Just to, you've read a book and they make a movie on it. I'm going to go see that movie because I'm curious how they did it. I'm curious how the adaptation works compared to what I read and what was in my brain. Even though a lot of the times people don't like the movie, but they still bought the ticket to go see it.
Right.
So, like, I'm sure. So, for example, again, the Percy Jackson series movie that came out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that it at least profited. I guess I shouldn't say that, but like that's because the books were so beloved. Maybe they marketed it really bad too. The Mortal Engines, because like there is just no way that they can't at least break even.
I know it's weird, and I wonder if, I mean, with the benefit of like, what is that called when you can look back?
Foresight.
With the benefit of foresight, well, I guess that'd be looking forward, right? Like if they could know what would have happened. I feel like this movie could have maybe done better if they cut some of the more like violent stuff, even though it wasn't that violent, and shot for like a PG rating and marketed it to kids
Yeah.
and like family as like, hey, here's a movie that you can go to the theaters as an adult, a PG movie to take your kid to that's action packed that you'll even think is cool because it's some of the craziest special effects ever made.
Yeah.
And maybe then it could have done well. Also, I mean, it's up against, I don't know, this doesn't seem like a Christmas movie. This seems like a summer movie.
Oh,
This
totally.
should
I
be
think
like
it should have been released in the summer.
like a June release or
Yeah.
something like that. So I think it was a bad place to release it.
A lot of it feels like inexperience.
Right, which is unusual.
Which isn't true.
Although, think about Jackson, the last 6 movies, and I think even King Kong, Christmas releases. So he's
So it's like Percy
in
Jackson's coming.
in that time
Peter
period.
Jackson's coming out with a movie. It's a holiday thing.
Yeah, it's like December, you're going to see the movie. So I wonder if that was into it where he's like, no, this is a December movie because...
pray and hope that man didn't fight for that.
Yeah.
With that kind of claim, because that is a very big chip on one shoulder.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not totally part of it. But.
Yeah. It's almost worse too, like watching the movie and it's like pretty good because it's not like Justice League was a pretty big bomb, but it was a really bad movie. So you're kind of like, yeah, good riddance. Like if this bombs, that's good. They're not going to make movies like this anymore. Cool. So
the first person we have is Hera Hilmar, who plays Hester Shaw. She is Icelandic, which explains the accent.
Yeah.
She is also in Anna Karenina, Life in a Fishbowl, Two Birds, An Ordinary Man, Oskin, Sea, The Romanovs. Quite a few things, actually. I've never seen her in anything. I thought she was good.
Yeah.
And then Robert Sheehan, probably not pronouncing the last name right. Probably Sheehan, because he's Irish.
Yeah.
So that is Tom. Perhaps best known, though, this guy as Klaus Hargreaves from Umbrella Academy. Everyone's like, no, I gotta watch this movie. He's in it. Yes, and I was most excited to watch this movie because of him, because I haven't seen him in anything else but Umbrella Academy, and he is so electric in Umbrella Academy that it's like, surely he's gotta like fully prove himself to me. So I was happy to see this movie. Weirdly enough,
he doesn't work in this movie.
He does not have a good British accent.
No.
I mean, who am I to say I'm an American? But I find his American accent more believable than the British one. We just, at some point in the movie, were like, you said, like, is he American? And I was like, no, he's Irish, actually.
Yeah.
And the accent's not working.
No, and I don't think he was great in this movie, frankly.
I think he did good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Subpar.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is.
I mean, he's not Shrike, so he's not gonna,
No. So he is, like I said, in Umbrella Academy. So he's in Mortal Engines. He's also in the Mortal Instruments.
Uh-oh. The Mortalverse is opening up.
How are we gonna know which is which? I wonder if he's on the poster. Yes.
Wait, is Mortal Instruments the movie that Peter Jackson made about like?
It's also a young adult series.
Okay, so it's not the series that's about like the girl and Stanley Tucci's like weird in it and stuff. And
that's The Lovely Bones.
The Lovely Bones.
That's a good movie from my memory.
Really?
Yeah, it is incredibly sad, and I've heard that the book is even more depressing. So I don't think I could.
That's
ever
a
read
Peter
it.
Jackson movie.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like in between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
I remember in that movie
King Kong
because she is in like the afterlife.
Yeah.
And it is very surreal, and the effects, I think, like if someone was kind of snooty about CGI, might not like it, but I think because it's the afterlife, it works.
Yeah.
That it's really not quote unquote good, but I don't think they were going for something that was real. They were going for something that was surreal.
Right.
So it's also Saoirse Ronan is the girl in Lovely Bones. Anyway, so he is also in Fortitude, Misfits. If Sydney's listening to this, that's funny. Inside joke.
Okay.
He's also in Mute, Geostorm, Three Summers. That's a lot.
Geostorm.
We have covered Hugo Weaving, and then also Jihai, who plays Anna Feng.
Okay.
is in Altered Mars. 2B. That's it.
2B, like the letter 2 and the number 2 and the letter B?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Ronan Rafferty, whose IMDb picture is a Getty's image.
Hey, that's always weird.
He is Bevis, who is the guy with the dumb hair, the gray in his hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is in Fantastic Beasts.
Oh, so he knows how to pick them.
He's also in the Siege of.
Here's something. This movie is way better than Fantastic Beasts, either movie, by a long shot.
Hands down.
Because this movie's like a Gentleman's 6, and Fantastic Beasts 1 is like a 4 to a 3, and then let's just say a 1 for Fantastic Beasts.
Oh, we're saying it. No. It's a 2, but the only thing that brings up to do is that
sweet lion Chinese monster
thing. Yeah. Okay, he's also in the Siege of Jadoville, Moon Boy, Algorithm, The Terror Show.
Oh, cool.
And then Lila George, who plays Catherine, Hugo Weaving's daughter in the movie. She's in Animal Kingdom.
Oh, you're talking about Thaddeus Valentine's daughter? Yeah.
They do say his name a lot.
They do say his name a lot.
The Kid, and that's about it.
Wow, she's in Charlie Chaplin's
She's
1920s movie, The Kid.
Yeah. And she's the love interest.
Wow.
It's a weird joke. I don't know. It was the first thing that came to my brain.
I was thinking more that she was the kid and she's just taking a long time to age.
Making the joke that she was not even a baby in it. She was a full grown woman.
Yeah.
Not funny.
That's funny.
And then Stephen Lang.
No, Jordan, that's funny.
Stephen Lang plays Shrike, our boy.
Now do we know Stephen Lang? What is he in?
He is an Avatar as Colonel Miles something.
That guy. He's like old, a little bit older. Oh yeah, Stephen Lang rules. That guy rules. He's like the guy who's like, we gotta get that unobtainium. Okay. And he's like, I think he literally smokes a cigar in Avatar in their like those tech suits.
Oh,
I think he makes the big like arm like grab a cigar and put it in his mouth. He's that kind of a guy.
I've only seen the movie once. He's also, but I mean, if you're still curious on if he's cool, he's in Tombstone. The movie Tombstone.
Yeah, Stephen Lang is good.
Yeah, that movie also stars Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, and Bill Paxton.
Have you seen that movie?
Just on TV with my dad.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies, whenever it is on TV, my dad will watch it and will not change the channel to anything else.
If we can sidebar and to call it a Liam Neeson movie, Take a Walk Amongst the Tombstone, Walk Among the Tombstones, and have some Tombstone talk. I remember being shown that movie and just like I was really, really loving it. And then it was just one of those things where I was a kid and I just fell asleep with like 10 minutes left of the movie. And I've never seen the end of the movie. To me,
because it was on TV, from my memory, on TV a lot, and it's a Western and my dad won't turn the channel, it's boring. I have a hard time with Westerns because I always associate it with boredom.
Yeah.
Because I usually I wanted to watch Rugrats, not a Western. He is also in Don't Breathe, Rogue Warfare, The Rookie. He's in a lot. Stephen Lang.
So the movie begins, and we see that there are cities that drive around on wheels.
It starts with a voiceover
by SHRIKE. Did you connect that dot?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's SHRIKE that's talking.
Wow, that's
I
cool.
mean, I'm pretty sure because no one else's voices sounded remotely like that.
Because
it was like really
I just thought
low.
It was, a narrator.
Yeah,
but you're probably right.
And so, it's explaining like the world blew up basically, and now we drive around with cities on wheels, and
some cities are big, some cities are small.
Yeah, very Mad Maxy, this scene.
Yes.
I mean, it's not nearly as good,
so
honestly.
It starts off with like one city, and we see a girl with a scarf over her face, so you can't see her face.
And I did want to point out, way ahead of the game on the mask game.
Really appreciate all that they've done for that.
Yeah, 2020, this girl, maybe this movie should have been released in 2020, because people would be like, she's wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask, I gotta go see that in the theaters that don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The cover of the movie is even her face wearing a mask.
Yeah. The cars are loud tonight.
So she is running around the city, and it's very cool world building, setting up of stuff. You're seeing how the city kind of works or whatever. And then Soon after that, you see a much, 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 much bigger city.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, I thought this city was big.
Right.
This one's big, and the big one's London.
Yeah.
Interesting. So pretty much you learn right off the bat, the big cities take down the little ones for resources because we're living in a world where resources are now scarce. Probably because they're driving around all over it. I don't know. But they're like it's like a salt mining city.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fun chase.
And it's a pretty decent chase. One thing that Adam from Mythbusters on that interview I was watching is he talked about how like when things are this big, like a lot of times they're just like so slow. And so Peter Jackson and the director talked about how like, well, they had to make that decision of like, we want them to move really fast and like figuring out the physics of those special effects.
I thought they did that well.
I thought they did it really cool. And it was like, oh yeah, when he said that, I thought, yeah, this should be a slow machine. And they're just driving it around at like 200 miles an hour, just like
fun.
And they leave these tracks that are like 50 feet deep. Yeah. And that was a cool touch that I never would have thought of.
Also cool world building.
Very cool.
So that's going on. Newsflash, they capture the city.
Yeah.
And I what I find interesting, I mean, they didn't really explore it too much. I'm sure they do in the books, but like, so they absorb the city and basically they're forcing these people to immigrate into London.
Yeah.
But I am just assuming that they're going to be like the low on the caste system.
Yeah.
Because they're like prisoners of war or something.
Right.
But while that's going on, we cut to a museum in London, which it's like, dang, this is cool. And you see when like one city's in pursuit of another, you see how the like, I guess, machines that they're built on like can
like
close.
Dissipate and like change and stuff like that.
Yes, to move faster.
It's all steampunky.
Oh, so steampunky. It's crazy.
You'd think the steampunk audience would have come out in droves.
Yeah, I know. On their little cities.
But maybe they couldn't power their cars to get there.
So we cut to a museum, which is very interesting concept. And then we see like they're really concerned over this one statue and its minions. And it's like Minions, Despicable Me minions. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
Which it's like, okay, don't know one thing about this book. So I'm just assuming, it is like this does take place in our world, like 1,000 years in the future. Okay, that's fine. I don't think Despicable Me will make it.
Well, I think it's supposed to feel like, I mean, not to this extent, but it's supposed to have that same thing. Planet of the Apes, you get to the end and you see New York City and you're like, that's from our place?
Yeah, that's much more fascinating to me than something from pop culture.
Right. And I think it was a crazy bad move to include Despicable Me statues.
Yeah, and it's like if you felt the need, just one, if you're thinking, let's do a pop culture thing, you've gone too far. Try to find a historical thing that defines the 2000s. I don't know what that is. And I guess, your brain would go to pop culture for that reason. Sure.
Well, I mean, wouldn't it be even cooler if they were like, look, we have the last brick from the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And you know what that is. And you'd be like, oh, wow. Or like we have a piece of the Eiffel Tower. And you'd be like, the Eiffel Tower's gone? That's crazy. Yep. But instead it's Despicable Me statues.
Yeah. And then later on when they show the one setting where it's like iPhones and stuff.
Yeah.
That I don't really have a problem with. I have less of a problem with that than I do Despicable Me. Because it wasn't just iPhones, it was like several
and they called it the age of the screen.
Yeah.
And I theoretically like that idea. I felt like the museum stuff was like a little too preachy. Yeah. It felt very like back in the old days, they used to only be on their phones.
They were so primitive, but they did have a lot of advanced things as well. And we're going to use it to destroy another city.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, so you didn't know that Despicable Me was like a pop culture statue, but you know about like biomass, like crazy technology. It's a little like, I think some of that logic breaks down if you think about it too much.
Yeah.
But it's also like, yeah, okay, just forget about it. It's supposed to be a cheap joke anyway.
We're at the beginning of the movie. We have the whole
Yeah.
movie left. It's not, you don't get mad now.
Right.
But we do learn, so we're introduced to Tom, who I will refer to as Klaus. He is one of, I guess you would say, like, a curator. He is interested in the old world. So
Yeah.
he has like all of his crap, which you would call it crap because it's just junk from the 21st century.
Yeah.
But he is interested in all of it. I find that interesting, but he's got secret stuff behind a painting. Okay. And then we were introduced to Hugo Weaving's daughter. Okay.
Yeah. She's whatever.
She
mean,
moves the story forward when she needs to.
kind of. Yeah.
And then they talk. It's just, this is a point of the movie where it's all exposition, so it's just like blah 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 blah.
yeah.
So meanwhile, they're moving this small city into the big city, and then we go back to the girl with the mask, and she's still mysterious and cool. What is she all about? And then Klaus and the girl end up getting down to that area, and they're looking through crap, and they find a toaster, and they talk about a toaster for a
while.
long
For a
time. Like, that was too much for me.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the movie, I think, is like it sort of can't decide if it wants to be exposition heavy or not.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's a lot of stuff, like just the basic idea of like the cities running around. They just explain that in a sentence, and you're like, cool, into it. But then in the next scene, it's like, let's talk about toasters for like a minute and a half, and it's like, huh? Like,
I wish they would. Okay, so I guess this is when we start talking about, this is a love letter to so many directors.
Yes.
Let's start with the first one, George Miller.
which Christian Rivers mentioned in the interview.
Of course he would, because this feels very Mad Max at certain points.
Yes.
And I wish they would have gone that route in terms of, because Mad Max does take place in our world.
Yeah.
So they take place in our world. It is in the future, but they don't do any callbacks to the present. Love it. And so but because that it is established in our world, they would use a car like we use a car. They don't have to like make up new aircraft or something.
Right. And in our episode of Mad Max Fury Road, we talked a lot about how like Fury Road does not really it doesn't really have any moments that are like, okay, actually we have this ritual that we do where like we do this, and this, and this, and that's why this bad guy needs us. They're just like, he has women in there that he takes advantage of, and you're like, got it, okay.
Yep, clear.
It's like, and then it's like, oh, they're tattooing high octane on Mad Max. I'm not totally sure what that means, but I can figure out. Cool, I like it.
Yeah.
Keep going.
He's captured. That's bad.
Yeah,
He needs
it's
to
just
get
like
out.
it's so cohesive. I mean, the movie's perfect. So
It is. And looking at this, and you see the Mad Max little notes of like the little bit of chaos, the little bit of like the dystopian stuff that they are using from some like scrap metal kind of stuff. And I wish they would have just like dug more into that and not done callbacks on the present that we're currently living in. Because I'm not watching Mortal Engines to be reminded of Despicable Me. I'm watching Mortal Engines because I want to see cities drive around and eat other cities.
right.
There is plenty of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
and
like,
that's the stuff I really like about the movie.
Yeah.
It's just it's like sometimes you need to decide like, okay, is this going to be Inception where it's like so much exposition, or is it going to be Mad Max? Like the in between isn't always satisfactory to me.
Absolutely.
And I think this movie does that.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. We can just talk about directors as we go along. But the first one's George Miller.
Do you have any others off the top of your head?
Oh, yeah. The Wachowski sisters.
Oh, absolutely.
So a lot of this movie feels like Matrix hardcore.
Yes.
Especially when we get to the Neo girl.
Yeah, Anna Fang.
Anna Fang, who reminds you of Neo.
It's like not Neo.
No. Who's his girlfriend?
It's like Trinity. And Morpheus had a baby.
Okay,
Because she wears like Morpheus glasses.
Yeah.
Basically.
She wears sunglasses
Or
too.
no,
though,
she
in the
doesn't wear
movies.
Morpheus glasses. His are round. But she feels Morpheus-y.
Yeah.
And she also feels Trinity.
Yeah.
Trinity-y.
So she's the Matrix person of this movie, and she is very cool.
Yeah.
And very badass. And
Once
then,
she takes the glasses off, though, she's not as cool, I gotta say.
Sure. But even when we're introduced, like when there's a little bit more fight scene with like her crew, that also feels Matrix to me.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And then there was another director, so George Miller, the Wachowski sisters, and then I'll think of the other one as we go along.
Well, one thing, so just to keep the theme conversations going, later in the movie when they're getting sold into like slavery, I thought that was really good world building.
I agree.
Because they didn't really explain it, and then they said something like, they'll make good sausages, and you're like, oh, they're selling them for food. They're going to turn them into food.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if you missed it, you would not catch that.
Yeah.
And I thought like, that was when the movie really worked for me, is stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, city gets eaten.
So the girl, the redhead girl,
Little Red Riding
we
Hood.
don't know who she is yet, sees Hugo or Thaddeus Valentine and
Yes,
goes
of
up and
course.
stabs him.
Yeah.
And she says, that was for my mother. And you're like, okay, already know she's got a vendetta out.
Yeah.
Vendetta. V for Vendetta. Hugo Weaving.
Oh yeah, that's another. He is Guy Fawkes, right?
Isn't he?
Yeah. Okay.
Think so.
No, I know he's in it. I just couldn't remember if that's who
If he's
he
in
plays.
it, he's Guy Fawkes.
Yeah, okay.
He Guy Fawkes. So she stabs him and then she runs away. Tom/Klaus starts running after her because it's like, you hurt the guy that everyone loves in the city. I'm going to go get you. So he's running after her, and they're in an area where the big city is literally eating the little city.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool. That they are basically, ripping it to shreds, probably for resources.
Yeah, that was very cool.
Yeah.
And then they like go down the garbage chute and
Hugo pushes Klaus down the garbage chute.
because before Hester Shaw went down, she said, ask Thaddeus about Hester Shaw, and then he mentioned it to Thaddeus, and Thaddeus kicks him off.
Yeah.
And I think so. At this moment, I was like, okay, there's a lot going on, like with characters and stuff, and I was like, I don't think this is gonna work. And now I see why people didn't like this. But I thought throughout the movie they did a pretty good job. Where at the end I was like, yeah, I know the names of the characters, and I do know what happened, and it did make sense.
Yeah.
But it is like, I think part of it is like you have a new world, so that's a lot to adjust to. Then you have all this like exposition and like this like thematic plot going on, and I think a lot of people probably were just like, I'm out, checking out after the 20 minutes because they're like, just stick to one thing. I can't do all of this. There's so many characters.
I think it's just all bad timing. That's more than anything that's what killed this movie. I thought of the third director.
Yes.
Guillermo del Toro.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Many parts of this movie remind me of Guillermo del Toro.
And Terry Gilliam.
And Terry Gilliam.
Which they mentioned him in the interview.
Of course they did. Because there were so many pipes in this movie.
And wires.
And wires. But no Robert De Niro. Anyway, so Guillermo del Toro, many elements of him in this movie, I feel like that comes from the fantasy elements. And so it's like, there are more just like, oh, this reminds me of Guillermo del Toro. There's that. And then Terry Gilliam, especially when they're basically more on the inside of London as a city.
Yeah.
It felt like Terry Gilliam, and it's like, this is cool. He's talking to this lady at her switchboard. Like, who is she? What's going on here?
Very cool shot on that.
Would have been fine if they explored the inner workings of how the city runs a little bit more. But I also really don't care that they didn't.
Yeah.
It just piques your interest. So that's good world building too.
Yeah.
Anyway, to go.
Well, and what? So I I think the movie sits at like a pretty easy 6 for me. But if you had a director, and I don't want to bash Christian Rivers, I think this being your first movie, like that's a pretty decent first movie. Maybe he's got a promising career. Maybe he doesn't get another shot because this was such a bomb. I don't know. But
I hope it wasn't too much pressure because they advertised it like there was so much pressure riding on this guy.
Yeah. I don't know. But what would be interesting, is if you did have, and you would think since he came from the art department, it would be there. But I feel like if you had someone with a more intense and exaggerated visual style, I think the movie would have really popped.
Yeah.
Because it is shot in such a way that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's kind of like, okay, I graduated from film school as a cinematographer. These are the shots I do. And you're like, okay, yeah, I've seen that. But it doesn't have the, like, flair that, again, I think Mad Max is the closest movie to talk about.
Yeah.
So we keep mentioning that. But that movie has really creative shots.
Yes.
And, it wouldn't have killed this movie to throw in some Dutch angles. That's what I'm trying to say, is it's like everything's just like pretty perfectly composed. The whole world, for everything that's going on, everyone is very clean.
Yeah.
And it needed some dirt
Yeah.
And I think if they got some other actors that maybe looked like had some more miles on them, I think the movie would have, some of those small details, I think would have added up literally in hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But, so
Tom and Helsa.
Hester.
Hester.
I think you said her real name.
Okay. Hester. So they're out on the ground now and they need to work together to survive pretty much.
Yeah.
And you're learning that Tom has never been outside of London. I do like the throwaway, well, not a throwaway line, but the line that he has where he's like, I've always wanted to leave London. Now I'm having second thoughts. Like kind of a corny joke, but it's like, that's an interesting thought to have in this kind of world that he would want to leave his city. How do you leave a city?
Right.
So they're in
the big ruts, which
they're
are
the big
cool.
ruts created by the cities. They almost get caught by scavengers, but they're saved by like a roly-poly.
Which that sequence, I was like, yeah,
very cool. But they're saved by like a roly-poly thing.
This thing was cool.
Machine.
So this thing, I'm taking over, Jordan.
Okay.
This part also felt very Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
They're in like this like centipede roly-poly thing that like can dig into the ground and like sit there and things can drive on top of it and it gets up. And then you meet this guy who's like, he's Australian or New Zealand and he's kind of like a little bonkers.
Yeah.
And, he's got a Mad Eye Moody vibe to him and he's like, whoa. And then he has this like wife or partner or something that is this woman that's like, oh, would you like some tea? And it's like you see that character, you go, okay, I know this is like the Aunt Nanny.
Yeah.
And she's kind of a jerk. And she's like mean to Hester. And she mentions how her scar is like ugly and stuff like that. And I was like, that's kind of a fun twist that like I was expecting this to be like a sweet old lady. And she's just a massive jerk.
Which is really just a foreshadowing of what happens next.
Right.
So they're taking them in. They're going to take them to the nearest town. But as they're going along, they realize they're now going a different direction because Tom was going to be a pilot, so he has a really good sense of direction. So they're going to maybe escape, but Hester is too injured to escape, so they stay and they are sold into slavery. So they took him to scavengers, pretty much.
Yeah.
So this is
I'm so sorry. I just thought that you should do art for this, and it should just be a microphone that's driving around. Like it's just got like those like
don't
tank
get your
wheels.
hopes up for artwork on this one. That's funny.
That would be great though.
Yeah. Anyway, you could even take a picture of a microphone and draw circles around it.
I'm not going to do that,
Okay.
Jordan. You're the artist for the podcast.
So meanwhile, while that's all happening, Hugo is cracking this master plan that we don't know about, but he's also trying to get Hester off his tail. So he goes to the prison, which is a crab machine in the ocean. Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I was like, wait, they have them in water too? They
Yeah.
have cities over water?
No,
well,
but it was
it's
just a prison.
Yeah.
And
but,
then he talks to this dude in a steel box that is like something from the Lazarus. I'm just going to call it the Lazarus Project, which I think is from another movie. But that's from
they say he's
Interstellar,
like
Lazarus Project.
Yeah,
but,
that's true. It's like a resurrected human.
Yes. But he's like a cyborg. And I get the impression that they were resurrected and built to like be war machines.
Oh, okay.
That's what I got.
didn't put that together, but you're probably right.
Just because he's really strong.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's true.
He lets him out to go kill Hester because she broke some promise. And it's like, whoa, what could this promise be? Also, give me more of this guy.
Yeah, Shrike.
Shrike.
We like Shrike.
Love him so much.
So he, more stuff is happening, business, all that stuff. And then Shrike shows up and he's like, Hester, you promised.
Yeah.
And they fight a little bit.
This is also when Anna Fang shows up to save
That's right.
them
There's like
from
the
being
slave
sold.
thing,
Yeah.
and then they get out of there. And
on
then,
her cool blimp.
Yeah, there's a blimp.
Blimp City.
Yeah, have we got to Blimp City yet? No, we
I
haven't.
just wanted to say it.
Okay. And otherwise known as Bespin, the Cloud City, with Lando Calrissian, which you said Lando Calrissian, and I didn't even have to say it. And I was like, oh, Jordan's knowing her Star Wars. I was very proud of you, Jordan.
You're welcome.
But Hester, Shaw, and Shrike are kind of having a little thing, like a little fight. And then they get away. They're up in the Cloud City. and Hester begins to say that like
He raised her.
yeah, her mom was like an archaeologist who found this old tech, and
Okay, I just got to say one funny thing about that moment of the movie. So she's an archaeologist. It's showing her like brushing dust off of stuff. What I find funny about that, and I don't know how archaeology works, but I also don't think this movie does either.
Right.
So she has like all this junk in her house, which their house I liked that set a lot. It was cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
But she's like sweeping dust off of this thing, and it's just funny because the dust just comes off so easily, and it's like you
Right.
didn't do that outside before bringing it in, whatever. So then she brings it. It's a flashback showing Hugo Weaving would show up every now and then.
I did get the impression though that was like her workstation. So
Yeah,
as far
I
as
know,
the dust goes,
but like dust it off outside. I don't know, but no, that's leading into the thing that actually made me laugh. But so Hugo Weaving would come in a lot because he was also interested in her work. And
immediately you're like, okay, so he's Hester's father.
yeah. Let's not reveal this later. But she has this thing on her table, which is the like Medusa thing.
Yeah.
And she's dusting it off. And she dusts off and you see the logo. And then she picks it up and like quickly brings it over to another table and like dust falls off of it. And it's like, she would have dug this out of the ground and immediately have seen that logo. You're not convincing me that you're going to sprinkle some dust over that logo so that she can just wipe it off. And that's a reveal. And like that's what causes her death. A little much, guys. Anyway, go ahead.
But so we find that out. She found this like weapon, old tech, and Hugo Weaving wanted it. Thaddeus Valentine, as I like to call him. And he really wanted it. And she's like, no. And so he kills her.
And she's like, no. It's just funny how you say
oh, no. And so he kills her. And then I almost said Jordan. But Hester is like, what are you doing to mom? And he throws the knife around and it's what cuts her face.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was cool. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay. And then she like runs away.
Mom
Mom
gives her a necklace and says, keep this.
Yeah. And he runs away, or she runs away, and then she's raised by Shrike. And there's a pretty nice sequence where they're like growing up, and he like builds her like a cyborg skeleton.
And his intentions are so pure. So he's raising her, and he understands as he's raising her that he doesn't have a heart, so he doesn't understand human emotion anymore. But in her dialogue, she is saying that she believes that there was something, that there's still a part of his old life left inside him that does make him feel.
When she finds the picture,
it like gave me chills.
It was a
so
good
sad
moment.
Yeah, really sweet. So it's like him saying
and the picture, if you haven't seen the movie,
sorry, that's true.
Is she's
no one's seen this movie, so we better be pretty descriptive.
Well, hopefully people watched it before or will watch it after this.
Yeah.
Because it's a good movie.
Yeah.
There's giant cities that fly around. What more do you want?
Yeah.
But she like is working in like Shrike's house and she grabs this picture and it's like a man and a child and his wife.
Just a man and a child.
Oh, a man and his. Oh, that's right. It was just a
Yeah.
man and a child, and she says like she thinks that was
Him.
Shrike.
Yeah.
Because we find out that he's a resurrected human. So
Yeah.
you do have to die to become what he becomes.
Yeah. So which means that he lived a life
Right.
before all of this stuff. Who knows when? And it is like he has memories so deep seated far into him that you would. I think character-wise is so beautiful that that's why he is able to raise her. Maybe he wasn't very nurturing, but he was able to raise her. And then he is at a point where he's like, I know that your heart is broken. I don't have a heart, but I know that yours is broken and I want to fix it. So he even has like that desire to help. Like the kind of classic robot, like, I want to help you fix this thing. In order to do it, I'm going to kill you and then bring you back so that you can no longer feel pain.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is so weird thing that I'm about to say, but that is so sweet because it's the only way that he can basically communicate love.
Yeah.
As a father.
Yeah, it's
Amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
And then she hears that London is coming.
Yeah.
So like her whole flashback took place like anywhere from like days to months before the beginning of the movie, which is cool because I thought it was going to be way
years.
before that. No, because she hears London is coming.
Oh, I thought you meant just the whole thing because I was like, she was 8 when he found her.
I mean, she hears that London is coming and she leaves and she breaks her promise.
Because her promise was that she was going to let him do that to her.
Yeah. And so then we're up in the Cloud City And they're like,
and we are introduced to a cast of characters that is such a shame because finally we get some diversity into this movie. And it's a lot of characters that you just know from looking at them. They're the warriors and the fighters who don't get hardly any lines or character development, and a lot of them are going to die.
yeah.
But they got a lot of different types of people in it, so I guess that works. That was just like, you just know that they went out of their way to show different nationalities because it is like a world where there really is no country anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, how come... So wouldn't that stand to reason on some level
That, like,
London
maybe-
shouldn't be full of white people?
Yeah, or maybe like our 5 leads should be more diverse than white people.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a bummer. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we learn that...
Or like white models, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So Hester... So they're saying like your mom must have left something with you, Hester, and she doesn't really know. She can't really answer. But Tom is able to help in some way. I can't really remember about flying or...
Yeah, he's always wanted to be a pilot.
He knows about London, so I think he's able to offer some tidbits of wisdom about what to do about it. And then
Yeah.
they're ambushed.
And then kind of to cut to the chase, there's like a group of people who are the anti-tractionists because they want their cities to be on land, which I like. That's a fun idea. And they have a huge wall, and Hugo Weaving, or as I like to call him, Thaddeus Valentine, he's going to use the weapon to break down the wall, and then he'll like rule the world.
Yeah.
And so the people in the clouds, they get attacked, and it's cool that like it says like no smoking up there and stuff, because if a fire lights, it explodes because it's all like blimp technology.
Yeah,
and
blimp city.
helium, right? Is it? No, not helium.
Right?
Maybe it's helium. Yeah. And that's flammable. So it's like, I thought that was a cool touch. And so then it's like, okay.
They're ambushed by Shrike, by the way.
That's right. They are ambushed by Shrike. And then Shrike realizes that Hester Shaw is in love with Tom.
Because he's about to kill Tom. And then, did you catch that part, though, where he's like, she's trying to say, like, you can't kill him, you can't kill him. And he's looking at her and he's like, you are crying. You feel bad. I must kill him. Like, basically, like, you were crying, you were hurt.
Yeah.
And it's she's trying to basically communicate to him that you are the one hurting me.
Yeah.
And then he's already injured at this point. And I think so then Shrike dies. Newsflash, Shrike dies. But it was like just another beautiful moment where he's about to kill the man that she loves and she's asking him not to. And he is understanding that she loves him and he lets go. And that's like his spirit leaving him.
Yeah. And his eyes like die down, and then it goes into his eyes and he has like a moment, like he sees all the moments with Hester.
And then it ends with a moment with a little child from his past life.
Oh, I don't even think I caught that.
Really? Yeah.
Or was it really obvious?
It was pretty obvious because it was like a man's hand and a baby's hand, like in it. And it was like,
I don't
my
remember
gosh,
that.
his last memory was him as a human with his son.
Yeah, we love Shrike.
Oh, he's so good.
Shrike rules.
Yeah.
And other movies don't have Shrike.
It's just for a movie,
and that's a shame.
For a movie that's trying to do so much, and a lot of it, unfortunately, is kind of generic. They were able to capture a type of theme in one character, the theme of being a parent.
Yeah,
and they did it so well.
Yeah,
and he dies with about 30 to 45, not 45, but like 30 to 40 minutes left in this movie. So we got a lot of movie
and you know
left.
what? By this point, maybe you've seen the movie. And you're listening to our podcast and you're like, man, I always look forward to the Halloween specials, even though you've only had one so far. And I was so excited for you guys to tear apart this movie. Well, first of all, we always go into a movie and at least me, but
Depends
you too,
on the movie.
Yeah. I always go in, even if I don't like the movie, I'm like, maybe I'll crack it this time,
Yeah.
Even if it's something like Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where I was like, I can't wait to never see this again, but we got to watch it for the podcast. And then I'm like, okay, I got to give it a fair shot, though. So go into this movie. I went into this movie actively like, I'm ready to overlook flaws because I want to like this movie.
Me too.
But you might be going, come on, you guys should rip this to shred. Like, the script's kind of a little wonky. The acting is wonky. But here's the thing. And I mean this in all seriousness, and you might think that's kind of a reductionist argument. But yes, there are problems. But this movie has Shrike, It has blimp planes that fly around. It has cities that drive around and engulf other cities. And then it has a weapon that shoots stuff that does insane looking explosions.
Like an implosion.
Yeah, that looks cooler than a lot of what those kind of explosions usually look like.
They at least put a color on it. It's purple.
Yeah, and I like that.
It's not an amorphous black blob.
And I think Hugo Weaving is really good in this movie.
He is good in this movie.
And so I just think that, no, this movie is not as good as The Matrix. No, it's not as good as Mad Max Fury Road. But it's a good movie. And it should have made, like $300, $400, $500. I mean...
Well, luckily...
million.
Okay, good.
Million.
Yeah.
And I know we still have some more to talk about the movie, but I just, it's another thing that we talked about last night is I think that audiences right now in our current climate are uncomfortable with movies that are earnest.
Uh-huh.
And this movie's pretty hard on its sleeve.
Uh-huh.
And I've heard the same about Alita Battle Angel, which was also a financial bomb, which we haven't seen yet.
But I've heard it's good.
I've only heard good things.
Yeah.
But apparently that movie's really earnest.
Mm.
And I think people, I think right now in culture, it's well, I only like earnest if you can turn it around and have Rocket, make fun of it really quick.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you know us. We love Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not knocking Guardians. But, Marvel has a tendency of, let's be really earnest and nice, and then they kind of undercut it.
Yep.
As a joke.
Yep.
And so I think that's another thing in this movie where it's oh, well, that's corny because it wasn't cool. It wasn't the Jonker. It wasn't the Jonker movie. So
Yeah.
I don't, it has to be edgy and cool.
You do have to bring up another part of the argument with this movie, which goes into the Patrick Willems video about crazy intense movies.
Gonzo Blockbusters is his video.
Does he say that's what it is? Is that his term?
Yeah. That
Okay.
if you look up Gonzo Blockbusters on YouTube, that's what's going to show up.
Okay, so he has this recent video about basically explaining why did these movies that are so balls to the walls insane, how are they not good / how did they not do well? Meanwhile, we have very subpar Marvel movies. Like we've said so many times in this episode, we like Marvel, but
I love Marvel, and I get when people are kind of comparing to Marvel because it is the standard right now.
It is the standard, so you have to. And then
But at the same time, I think Endgame is a perfect movie. So I am someone who is fully into the Marvel brand.
But what I'm trying to say is when you have that much quantity in a franchise, not everything's going to hit. So that's why it's easy to go towards it. Because what are you always going to get out of a Marvel movie? Action. It's an action adventure movie every single time. So because we have had it since 2008 or before, we have become pretty desensitized to crazy special effects.
Yes.
Part of that is just kind of interesting and cool thing to think about, how a lot of it doesn't faze us anymore and we're not really amazed by it. Part of that is a bummer because we have movies like Immortal Engines that comes out that is so crazy, arguably crazier than a lot of Marvel movies that I've seen, but somehow it just doesn't hit the same way. I think part of it goes into legacy. Marvel has a legacy, this doesn't. They're trying to do a new thing, but then you also in his movie or video, he talks about that one with Dane DeHaan.
Yes, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Which I still do not care to see that movie, honestly. But seeing shots of that movie, it was that's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Some of
I
the
want to
effects
see it
that
now.
I'm looking at.
And one of the things he points out in that video is that back in the day when Jaws came out, when Star Wars came out, when all these movies came out and they were these huge blockbusters, it was things people had never seen before.
Yeah.
When you see Star Wars, the first time you see it and they go into the cantina in the Mos Eisley city, you see 100 different aliens and it's what?
Yeah.
That hadn't been done before. Jaws, you see this crazy shark and all of that stuff. And his argument was now when people do that, when they push the boundary, they're not rewarded with their box office. And then, but the thing he brought up is he's there's one movie though that did it perfectly. And it's it's balls to the walls. It's crazy. And it's also box office glory. And that was Mad Max Fury Road.
Uh-huh.
And but this movie's cool.
Well,
I know we haven't.
Yeah.
We should go back to the plot, but
Yeah.
I mean, what should we say? There's a huge action sequence at the end. That's
They're
pretty
blowing up
decent
the wall.
action.
So you see that there is a grounded city, which is cool. Another cool world building thing. And they need to
Yeah.
protect it. And there's this wall that they are shooting with an ancient bomb weapon called Medusa from London as a city. From London. So Hester realizes that the necklace that her mom had left her with has the only key that can stop the bomb and deactivate it. So they need to get back into London and stop it. So
Right.
all of the Matrix people are flying into the city and taking down the gun so that they can safely get inside. So once they do, they're in there. Let's just say it. She stops the bomb. She gets it in there in time. In order to do that, Anna Fang died by Hugo's hand. And then meanwhile, Tom is flying around waiting, I guess, is kind of what he's doing. Oh, no, he is trying to get the city to stop moving. So he shoots it from inside. That's cool.
And that's cool. It's
Yeah.
very Star Wars Phantom Menace.
Yeah. So they get...
And another director is Miyazaki. This movie's so Miyazaki.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Crazy.
like you're seeing Howl's Moving Castle and Castle in the Sky in the same movie, live action.
Yeah.
And they also mentioned him in the interview. So that was very...
Yeah. That is... We talked about that while we were watching it.
Yeah.
So then they get it. They get out. Hester fights with Hugo. We find out that's her dada. And we're all like, not
Yeah, I know.
surprised. And what happens after that?
He gets squashed by his own city.
Yeah.
And then they're okay. And then Hester and Tom like fly away.
I thought... So he gets her, she gets away. I do like it's kind of a fun thing where they don't go right back to the city right away and they're partying with everyone like yay, but they're like, let's take a moment in the clouds. This is quiet, this is calm, this is nice. Let's hug each other and giggle for a while. That's how it is.
Yeah, that
and
was a
it's
little
like, ooh, that's the young adult part.
Well, and it was very odd. This movie had a lot of ADR in it.
Yeah.
Probably I would guess somewhere between like 20 and 40% of the dialogue was re-recorded, and it was very jarring and weird.
Yeah.
I think this movie's good. I think it's worth a watch, and even if you don't like it, at least appreciate the artistry behind it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't like something, but you can go, I get what they were trying to do, and I at least it's better than them playing it safe, because they don't play it safe in this movie.
No, but I kind of wish they risked a little bit more.
I wish so too, but at the same time, it's like Shrike was in this.
Yeah.
And are we gonna really?
And it's just truly...
just one more reminder: Shrike was in this movie.
Yeah. I just don't understand. Did the author do something pre this movie happening that everyone hated him for? And they're not going to like support him anymore? Like, I don't get why this movie did not at least break even. It makes
very weird.
Absolutely no sense, especially because we are so used to action movies these days.
Yeah.
Just so crazy, and I don't think we'll ever really know.
But yeah, I think we've summed up how we feel.
Yeah.
I would like to ask one question before we leave. What do you think is your least favorite / worst movie that we've covered on this podcast? I'm going to leave all this silence in for you listeners. I'm not editing this part.
Well, Fantastic Four was pretty bad.
I think it's arguably Fantastic Four. Shrek the Third has to be up there.
And one of the Jurassic Park movies. At least one of them.
Yeah.
Honestly. Probably the last one.
Oh, and then there's Battle of the Five Armies.
Oh.
You know what?
Bad question.
I think it's Crimes of Grindelwald for me. I think I'd rather watch any one of those other movies than that.
I'd rather
again.
watch I would rather watch all 3 Hobbit movies over Crimes of Grindelwald.
That movie's so freaking bad.
And it has the lion, the
And
lion
folks,
in it.
I did say frickin', so we do not have an explicit tag on this episode. Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody. But seriously, go to patreon.com/MicahMcCaw. And this month is Monsters, Inc. Next Wednesday, it's going to be Monsters University. So there's plenty of Patreon episodes to listen to. If we get one more, we're going to release the Winnie the Pooh tapes. And very soon, keep your eye on my Instagram, and I'll talk about it on the podcast. I might even insert an ad. I'm going to be doing a Christmas show, live stream Christmas show premiere, and I'll explain that more later. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I want everybody who listens to be there.
But have a spooky Halloween.